Yes, please.
Now hit the switch on that.
It'll take a second. Push it up.
Yeah, I did. I tested.
There you go.
You can hear me.
Yes.
My name is Larry Lee. I'm a retired pastor. I was a bivocational pastor. That is, I worked at being a pastor and I also worked on a job. The job that I worked on was in Wichita, and it was working for a software firm as a project manager. I'm so excited. Oh, but again, my name is Larry. I'm glad to be here with all of you today. So we had a theme. When Samantha asked me to speak, she talked about a theme that she had. It's building bridges, honoring yesterday, inspiring tomorrow. So I looked at that theme, and I thought it was a really good theme. It speaks to who Martin Luther King was. And this is kind of in celebration of Martin Luther King. And he was a man who built bridges. He was a man who honored those who went before him. And he was an inspiration to people both during his time, and guess what? He still is today. That's pretty good. So let's examine this theme, building bridges, all right? Honoring yesterday, inspiring tomorrow. So the first thing I focused on was building bridges. One of the most beautiful bridges that I've ever been on is the Golden Gate Bridge in Northern California.
Yes, that's true.
Anybody been on that bridge?
Yeah.
Have any of you walked on the bridge?
Yes, I have.
You walked on the bridge.
I wanted to walk across it, but I didn't know my way back.
Yeah, but she's crazy. You walked on the bridge. I'm going to walk on the bridge, okay? Even though it's a great bridge, but it is so beautiful. It's just those cars are so close. But it is really great. It was built in 1937. Amazing. And then there's a bridge called the Sijin River Bridge in China that was built in 2009. It's the highest bridge in the world. I don't think I'd want to drive over it. I'm a little nervous with heights. But it is beautiful. Physical bridges are important, aren't they? Because they can help us get around dangerous or difficult areas. But we're talking about Martin Luther King. Can you think of a bridge that Martin Luther King might have crossed as he marched for freedom and justice? Is there one? I can think of one. Right outside of Selma, Alabama, is a bridge called the Edmund Pettus Bridge. It's named for Edmund Pettus, a Confederate general who was also a Ku Klux Klan Grand Dragon.
Yes, he was.
It was built in 1940.
What?
But here's the question. What made this bridge so famous? Why is it an important part of honoring yesterday? Well, I want to tell you this story. I'm going to be talking about just one little teeny piece of Martin Luther King's life. Because to try to describe all of his life it's so hard. On February 18, 1965, in Alabama, in the county that's near Selma, Alabama, a state trooper shot a young African-American man, Jimmy Lee Jackson. Now, as I talk about African-Americans today, I'll use the term African-American or black. Both terms are interchangeable for me. All right, so I'll use whatever term comes to mind. But this young man, Jimmy Lee Jackson, he was shot during a nighttime demonstration. And a week later, he died of those wounds. So the leaders in the city called for a march to the state capital of Alabama. Anybody know what the state capital of Alabama is?
Selma.
No. Selma is where they started from. They're marching to the state capital, which is called Montgomery. Montgomery, Alabama. Yeah, I didn't know either. It's good. We're good. But they wanted to bring attention to the injustice of Jackson's death. They wanted to bring attention to the ongoing police violence that was occurring. And they wanted to bring attention to the violations of African Americans' civil rights. In particular, they were concerned about the fact that the county in which Selma is located, blacks made up at that time more than half the population. But here's the question: what percentage of them were able to be registered voters?
0.
Actually, a lot more than 0. Not a lot more. 2%. That's all. They comprise 50% of the population. 2% of them were able to vote. And so they really wanted to bring attention to that. The registration office wasn't very often. They had some forms that they arbitrarily applied literacy tests that were used to deter and to prevent African Americans from obtaining the vote. This is a problem that was all over the South. And then there were poll taxes. You had to pay taxes to be able to register to vote. And if you were poor, you couldn't pay the amount of the taxes. The literacy test that they applied, if you came in to apply, you had to read, write, or interpret complex passages from the state or the federal constitution. And so the registrars would give the black applicants very deliberate, difficult passages, and then would give the white applicants easy questions or none at all. And they would fail those that came in very much on arbitrary interpretations of the answers that were given to them. So these were the issues that the black voters wanted to resolve. On March 7th, 1965, March 7th, John Lewis and Hosea Williams were the leaders of a march across the bridge. The idea was they're going to march across the bridge, which leads to the outside of the city. And they're going to march from Selma to Montgomery. And that's somewhere between 40 and 50 miles. They had about, that's a bit of a ways, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. That's a bit of a ways. They had about 600 marchers. And so they get to the, can you see that? They get to the bridge, they get on the bridge, and they are stopped. They are told to disperse. And they were told you have 2 minutes to disperse. And what followed was a tear gas response from the police. Marchers were spat upon, they were overrun by horses, they were attacked with billy clubs and attacked with boulders. The event came to be known as Bloody Sunday. As this occurred on a Sunday. And here's the thing. TV cameras recorded all of it. Footage of the violence shocked the nation. They interrupted TV shows to show what was going on. Over 50 of the marchers were hospitalized, one of whom was John Lewis. And over the next 48 hours, demonstrations were held in 80 United States cities in support of those marchers. It struck a chord, trying to cross the bridge. Martin Luther King wasn't present for that. He had planned to be there, but something came up. He had to speak that Sunday, and so his plans were to join them the next day as they continued to march. But of course there wasn't a next day at this point in time. So what Martin Luther King does is he issues a call for Americans of conscience. He said, I need you to meet me in Selma, because we're going to restart the march. That was on March 7th. Then on March 9th, a couple of days later, Martin Luther King now is there. He leads about 2,000 marchers to the bridge. But in the meantime, there had been a restraining order that was issued by the federal district court forbidding the march until they reviewed it a little bit more. So what Martin did, Martin and the marchers, they prayed at the bridge, and then they turned around and they left. When it comes to justice, when it comes to bettering our lives, I want to tell you, churches and prayer, I know, this is coming from a pastor. Churches and prayer go hand in hand. And they go hand in hand with peace. So they prayed, they turned around, but that very night there was still unrest. And people were attacked. And 3 of the marchers were white ministers. They were attacked. And one of them died from his wounds. He was from Massachusetts. On March 15th, 1965, President Lyndon Johnson introduced voting rights legislation in an address to the joint session of Congress. Martin had been trying to get the president to pay attention to this issue. Now was the time. And so he made quite a message and introduced that voting rights legislation. On March 17th, the federal district court rescinded the restraining order. After they reviewed everything, they decided that, you know what, it's within the rights of people to march, to demonstrate their issues. Let them march. And so, on March 21st, King, now for the 3rd time, approaches that bridge. And this time, he leads everybody over. Estimates of the number vary, somewhere between 3,000 and 8,000 marchers marched out of Selma, over the bridge, and on the road to Montgomery. By the time they got to Montgomery, the marchers had increased to 25,000. All of these events led to the passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. The Voting Rights Act, it suspended the literacy test. It provided for federal approval of proposed changes to voting laws. So the federal government had a chance to review what some of the states were doing. And so in those jurisdictions that had previously used tests to determine whether voters were eligible to vote, all of that was gone. They directed the Attorney General of the United States to challenge the use of poll taxes for state and local elections. All of that occurred because some people tried to cross the bridge. Well, It's interesting to think about bridges from a physical point of view, but honestly, when we talk about this particular thing, building bridges, what else do you think about when you think about building bridges? You really think about collaborating, right, with others. You think about people getting together. Different people that join together to achieve a goal. All this happened in 1965. Where were you at in 1965? Did you shout out maybe where you were at?
Washington, D.C.
Someone said Kansas. Washington, D.C.? Oh my. You might have some stories to tell. She says, I do. What's your name again?
Joanne Nichols.
Joanne. All right,
I
Joanne.
gotta tell you something. My son lives down in that state. I get to see him every once in a while. You know, I just go and see the place where they would go to church and stuff. But that's the, I can't remember all of it, but he, it was beautiful, and there was, a place where you can swim out there and all. I think it was all through the park, I think it was, but I know I went down there to see most of it, but get so old, I can't remember things.
That's all right. I have a bucket list. Anybody have a bucket list? Things that I would like to do. One of the things I really want to do is go to Montgomery, Alabama. I really want to go there. They've got some very interesting museums, and one of the museums they have there is a listing of all of those who were lynched in the South by state. And I want to see that. And someone had told me just a few weeks ago they needed me to. They asked, "Would you go to Montgomery, Alabama for a meeting?" And I got, "Yeah." Because after that meeting's over, I'm going to take a couple of days and I'm going to visit. So I'm looking forward to that later on this year. In 1965, can I tell you where I was at? I was 15 years old, 1965. I was a 10th grader, high school in Los Angeles. I lived in South Central Los Angeles. That is not adjacent to Beverly Hills. It's as far from Beverly Hills as you can get. I looked at TV as a 15-year-old to get my information regarding the civil rights movement. But you know what I noticed when I would look at TV? I would see these marches. And I saw that the marches had old black people on them. Oh, by the way, old black people was anyone older than me. But I saw that they had old people, they had young people, they had men, they had women. Do you know what else I saw? They had whites. And yes, there were some little kids that were involved in some of those too. But seeing that white people were a part of the marches, a part of all that was going on, that for me was really important. It was proof that as a black person, as a black people, we were not alone in this. That's what building bridges is. It's when all of us get together. The other thing that was interesting in the theme that we talk about, it says, honoring yesterday, inspiring tomorrow. When I look at that phrase, I think of a quote from George Santayana, a Spanish-American philosopher. In 1905, he stated this: "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. Progress isn't just about change. It is about that, but it's also about being able to retain, to keep what we have achieved. Today, we have a great deal of repealing rights that we fought for. And if our young people forget, or if they don't learn what we had to endure, to get our rights, it becomes so much easier to repeal. Now, I've talked about voting rights, and today we have efforts still to repeal voting rights. We have those that would like to take away some of the ways we can vote. We don't want absentee ballots. We don't want mail-in ballots. We see efforts to revise voting precincts to water down areas so that some minorities can't participate as much in Congress. We see that in a number of states. There was even discussion this year about Kansas. That was defeated, though. That did not pass. I'm not trying to get political. This isn't some political. I'm not running for any office, okay? There's no, so it's not about politics, and it is about human rights. I'm saying that all of us, we need to guard and be on guard to ensure that our freedoms that were obtained through blood, sweat, and tears remain in place. I'm glad that we're honoring Martin Luther King this week. But you know what? It's important to remember he did not do it by himself. We need to remember those other names as well. We need to remember in our history Fannie Lou Hamer, Rosa Parks, John Lewis, Ruby Bridges, Jesse Jackson, Harry Belafonte, Thurgood Marshall, Jesse Jackson. We need to remember what all of them brought to the table as well. Anybody ever heard of Harry Belafonte?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes. Great singer, wasn't he? Calypso singer. But did you know that he was a funder behind the scenes of the civil rights movement? He put his money where his mouth was. He was very quiet about taking money and sending it to those, to get people out of jail and to do the things that were necessary. Thurgood Marshall. Anybody ever heard of him?
Oh, yeah.
Of course, yes. He was an attorney for the civil rights movement. He went to court to get some of the things that we needed to get done. And of course, later on became a Supreme Court justice. All of those names are important too. And we need to remember the martyrs that died for the fight. Medgar Evers, Malcolm X, James J. Reed. That was the white Unitarian minister that died from injuries there at Selma Bridge. And of course, Martin Luther King himself. There's so many that did. We want to remember them too. But here's the thing. We're not in Selma. We're in Reed. Are there names to remember here in Reed? Well, glad you asked. Richard and Vivian Williams, Sylvia Alexander, Eric Alexander, Winifred Garnett, Skippy Garnett, Dennis Walker, Donald Jack Thal, Ed Roberts. These are just a few names. They remind us of those who fought for equal rights in their own ways in this town, in this place. Phoebe was the first black woman elected to the Newton School Board. When Barbara and I, we moved here twice. We moved here and stayed for 7 years, moved back to LA, stayed for 15 more, came to our senses, and moved back here. We've been here for 25 years. In a lot of places, if you've been there for 25 years, that's a long time, not in Newton. In Newton, 25 years is like, oh, you're newcomers. But I remember Phoebe when we came here, formidable, worked hard. Richard was an outspoken advocate for civil rights in the workplace. Richard scared me sometimes. He just didn't care. He's gonna tell you what's on his mind. Sylvia Alexander, who's also still alive, was a respected leader in this black community. Is there anyone who knows Sylvia? I've been told she integrated the Newton swimming pool.
Now, she tells about swimming there when she didn't know that she wasn't.
That she wasn't supposed to, that's right.
Yeah.
That was the way she did it.
Yeah.
She worked for the state of Kansas for social services. She has never been afraid to speak for the rights of those who need a voice. Some of her stories scare me. Because she doesn't think, she just goes. She just goes and does it. Her son Eric started a karate school. Winifred Garnett, who just passed away in November, was the first African American student to attend Halstead Hospital's nursing school. She spent 43 years caring for patients at that hospital. She shared before she died that the nuns at that hospital were supportive and kind. They built bridges. Skippy Garnett was one of those that integrated basketball in it. Jack and Joanne Thaw started a gymnastics school. Anybody ever heard of Ed Rollins? I know you have.
Yes, you know we do.
Yeah, I know you. Ed Rollins worked for the Santa Fe Railroad for 40 years as a porter. And in those years, you did not have a chance to go beyond being a porter. And I was reading through some of the wages that they paid porters. It was not much. He agreed to become part of a discrimination suit that was filed in 1966 under the Civil Rights Act of 1964 against Santa Fe. And can I tell you, he won. Isn't that great? It only took 27 years. December 1993, they were awarded, he and 273 other men that were part of that suit. They were awarded money. Of course, he had long since retired by then. But here's the thing. We need to remember what those who went before us did. We need to share those stories. We need to talk with others about what others have done here. You need to tell your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren. We need to talk about how we worked together, how we allowed love to be our chief weapon. We live in a day now where we like to insult each other, call names, and not like to, but it happens. But that's not the way to do it, right?
swimming pool.
Go ahead, what about the swimming pool?
We couldn't use the swimming pool. And then, trying to think of who was it, went to, talk to their people that, we all had to pay taxes. And, so they just told them if we could not swim, we wouldn't be keeping paying taxes. And so that worked, and so we could go anytime we want to now.
Well, there certainly was a time when you could go to the swimming pool and we had certain hours that we could swim at the pool. They would drain the pool, put more water in. You know, and put more water in so that others who were not black could come in. All kinds of things. Yeah, there's all kinds of things that were tried to convince us that we were not equal, that we were not worthy, but none of us believed it. And many of you didn't believe it either, because we didn't do it all by ourselves. It was many of us working together. So what gives me hope today with all of the things that are going on? Well, one of them is I'm looking at our young people. And by young people, that's anyone younger than me. Okay, which is almost everybody. I'm looking and I see, as I talk with young people, there are so many people out there that care about everyone. They care about people different from them. It's okay for them. They take differences pretty easily. That's the way it should be, right? Martin Luther King one time said this: returning hate for hate multiplies it, adding deeper darkness to a night already devoid of stars. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. See, I've read something similar to that. What book was it? Oh yeah, the Bible. Love one another. I'm encouraged that there still are a lot of us that actually want to be bridges. That there's still a lot of us that want to love each other. I'm encouraged when I see those who are willing to peacefully protest when they see wrong things happen. I'm glad that we still are willing to do that. What can you and I do? Well, I think we can do this if we share our life stories with each other. We may very well find that we've got more in common than we thought. We may very well find that there's some heroes living among us. I'd love to hear about D.C. in 1965. See, I think all of us have these beautiful life stories. We need to share them. But here's the thing you need to remember. You need to be a great listener, not just a great talker. It's one thing to talk, but it's another thing to listen. And I think we can be encouraged by what we hear. I'm from Los Angeles. Los Angeles, great city. I come to this community and I meet all of these people who grew up on farms. Did anyone grow up on a farm here?
No, it wasn't the whole, we had more animals, and we had as many, like chickens and all that. We had to go out there and take care of the animals and things, so.
Yeah.
But
So,
we had a good time.
when I hear those stories, I am taken to another world. All my milk homogenized in a carton. There's no way I'm going to a cow, I'm sorry. But when I hear the stories of where you came from and the lives that you had, I'm just so encouraged. And when I hear the struggles that you went through, I'm encouraged. Because we're going through some struggles today in our country. But we have always had to go through struggles. And as dark as some things appear today, they appeared dark years ago, decades ago. And yet, we made it. So share with each other. What can you and I do? We can practice loving each other. Again, share your experiences every time you get a chance with your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren. Share it with the most difficult group, your children. We can share. Share the information you have. Because there's a lot of wisdom in this room. There's a lot of wisdom. I still believe it's hard to hate someone when you get to know them. There's so much telling us we need to be scared of each other. We need to hate each other. Oh, that's wrong. Don't hate each other. Love each other. You and I don't have to agree with everything. You just have to care that you and I have the same opportunities. That's all. Can we have the same opportunities? Can we have a life that's filled with happiness? In a world that wants you and I to fear each other, we can do that. We do not have to fear each other. What can you and I do? We can remember what Martin Luther King said in a speech at the Lincoln Memorial in August of 1963. He said this. I love this. It's kind of become my slogan for living. If I cannot do great things, I can do small things in a great way. So, I'm not going to do big things, but whatever I can do, I'm going to do it in a great way. And I hope and pray that will be true for you too. Thanks for the time.